have probably heard that e.l.f. bought Rhode. I actually was not planning to do a long form video about this because I posted about it on my shorts already, but I've been seeing a lot of misinformation floating around, so I figured today we would clear everything up. This is what everyone is getting wrong about e.l.f. acquiring Rhode. So on May 28th, it was reported that e.l.f. bought Rhode, and I know this sparked a lot of confusion because a lot of people view e.l.f. just as the beauty brand, but I want to start right away by making the distinction between e.l.f. Cosmetics and e.l.f. Beauty. e.l.f. Cosmetics is this. It is the affordable drugstore brand that you know that was started in 2004. e.l.f. Beauty is the parent company. Similar to like a L'Oreal or an Estee Lauder, e.l.f. Beauty has other brands under their umbrella that they own. Now, I've done entire brand videos dedicated to both e.l.f. and Rhode in the past, and I will leave them linked down below. They're pretty detailed, but I want to go through just a very brief history of both brands, just very quickly. So e.l.f. was started in 2004 by beauty industry veteran Scott Vincent Borba and recent NYU grad at the time, Joseph Shama. And their vision for the company at the time was to create a very affordable and accessible beauty brand. And in the early days of e.l.f., everything was $1. Yes, everything. And it wasn't even until years later that they expanded into their $3 studio line. And from there, e.l.f. has grown into the brand that we know today. Interesting fun facts though about the two original founders of e.l.f. who have both now exited. But Scott Vincent Borba, who was previously a celebrity esthetician and one of the co-founders of e.l.f., is actually now a seminarian training for the priesthood. Joseph Shama has actually stayed in beauty because he later founded A.S. Beauty, which might not sound familiar to you, but let me tell you the brands under their umbrella. Mally, Julep, Bliss, Cover FX, and Laura Geller. Again, I will have that e.l.f. video linked down below if you want the full story, but as for Rhode, I know Rhode as being Hailey Bieber's beauty brand started in 2022, but Hailey is actually a co-founder, and she created it alongside of a husband and wife team, Laura Ratner and Michael D. Ratner. And part of that relationship came together because Michael D. Ratner had previously worked with Justin Bieber, Hailey's husband, because Michael D. Ratner has a media company, OBB Media. Remember that? It's gonna come back to this story later on. But from the start, Rhode was wildly successful. They crossed the 8-figure sales threshold in just 11 days, and more recently, they made about $90 million in revenue from their website in the final 2 months of 2024 alone, which was close to what the brand was once projecting for the entire year. So needless to say, they're doing pretty well, but let's talk about what everyone is getting wrong about this deal. I have a few points I want to call out here, and then after that, I'm going to answer a lot of the questions I've been seeing about this deal and what it might mean for both brands. The first thing people are getting wrong is that Rhode is not the first brand that e.l.f. has acquired. So they actually acquired their first brand in 2020, and it was the brand Well People. They acquired them for $27 million. The next acquisition happened in 2023 when they bought Naturium. Yes, e.l.f. owns Naturium, and that deal was $355 million. So the Rhode deal was the biggest, but it was not the first. Also in the year 2020, e.l.f. incubated Alicia Keys' beauty brand, Keys Soul Care. So they made that, and that is also under the e.l.f. Beauty umbrella. So the next thing that I'm seeing that is actually not correct is that e.l.f. paid $1 billion for Rhode. I have been seeing that figure everywhere. I reported that figure in my short that I posted, and it is right, but it is also not the full story, so I want to explain. So it was a $1 billion deal. That is correct. But that number is a little bit misleading, and let me tell you why. So here's the breakdown. It was $600 million in cash, $200 million in shares, and the potential for another $200 million earnout depending on Rhode sales over the next 3 years. And that additional $200 million is broken down into $100 million if Rhode meets internal revenue projections, and an additional $100 million if those projections are exceeded by a specific threshold. Yes, it is a $1 billion deal, but they didn't just give Rhode $1 billion. That's not really how it breaks down. And more accurately, we could say it was an $800 million deal with the potential for another $200 million. And piggybacking off of that, the next thing that I'm seeing that is not correct is that this is the biggest deal that we have seen. So it is not the highest deal monetarily, But it is a very big deal because of the speed in which it happened. To sell for that amount 3 years in is incredible. However, we have seen beauty acquisitions over $1 billion before. A brand that sold for more in somewhat recent years was Too Faced when Estee Lauder acquired them in 2016. That deal was $1.45 billion. That same year, L'Oreal acquired It Cosmetics for $1.2 billion. When Unilever acquired Paula's Choice, that was reported to be around $2 billion. And in 2023, L'Oreal acquired Aesop for $2.5 billion. So again, certainly not the highest amount that we have seen, but still a very big deal considering how young Rhode is. And to reference another fellow celebrity brand, let's talk about Kylie Cosmetics, Kylie Jenner's beauty brand. Now this was a bit different because Coty bought a 51% controlling stake in Kylie Cosmetics, but just for context, that was for $600 million. And as we now know, Coty ended up getting pretty screwed over on that deal. And feeding off of that, the next piece of misinformation I'm seeing is that Hailey Bieber is now a billionaire. This is not true because A, like we said, the math does not break down really to being $1 billion, but also Hailey didn't make this company fully on her own. That sum also wouldn't just go to all of the co-founders. There were other equity holders of Rhode. The brand received a lot of investments. And I talked in that Rhode video about how one of the investors is Scooter Braun. But to clear it up, this does not make Hailey a billionaire. Yes, she's gonna get a lot of money from this deal, but this alone did not make her a billionaire. So now let's talk about the questions that I'm seeing about this deal. And the biggest one is Hailey still involved? And she is. So they have reported that she is now the chief brand officer and the head of innovation. To what extent she's performing these roles, it's hard to say, but she's definitely still involved with Rhode. I'm also hearing some questions if e.l.f. will come into Sephora, because it was announced earlier this year that Rhode will be coming into Sephora UK, US, and Canada later this year. And to answer that, yes and no. So Sephora offerings vary widely globally. What you can buy at Sephora in the US is not the same as what you could buy if you go into Sephora France. And I share that to say that e.l.f. is actually already in Sephora in Mexico. So could we see e.l.f. in different Sephoras throughout the world? Definitely, we already have. Do I see them coming into Sephora US? I want to say probably not. However, it would not be the first time that Sephora has carried an affordable, like drugstore adjacent brand because they had ColourPop for a while. So never say never. Probably the number one question I've been hearing is, what is this going to mean for Rhode? What can we expect to see change now that e.l.f. owns Rhode? And to explain that, I actually want to call it a comment that I've been hearing a lot, that Hailey kind of sold out for selling her brand. I keep hearing that sentiment that e.l.f. acquiring Rhode kind of makes her a sellout, means that she was just in it for the money. And I'll start off by saying, in general, I think celebrity product lines are a bit of a cash grab, regardless of the founder. However, I will also say most brands are hoping to be acquired one day. Even looking at some of her competitor celebrity beauty brands that have not been acquired yet, they probably will be at some point. This is kind of just the course that we see. Being an independent brand has a lot of limitations, and for Rhode to grow and scale and the way that they're clearly trying to is going to require resources, and that's what a parent company can provide. And with that increase in resources, I would not be surprised if we see more Rhode launches in the next year or in the coming years than we were used to previously. I will say part of Rhode's identity is that they intentionally release few products very slowly and intentionally. Their motto is one of everything really good, which is a cumbersome way of saying fewer but nicer things. So I would imagine they'll still try to hold on to that identity while probably giving us more launches than we've seen in previous years. I've also heard a lot of people asking if the prices would change, and specifically if Rhode prices would go down. And I think this question is being asked because e.l.f. is a drugstore brand, but as we talked about earlier in the video, e.l.f. acquiring Rhode was not the drugstore brand doing that. It was e.l.f. Beauty, the parent company. So I would not expect the prices to go down. I would maybe expect them to go up, considering that e.l.f. recently announced that they're raising their prices. They cite tariffs and inflation for the reason for this. That being said, I will say it's certainly not a good look to announce that and a few days later announce a $1 billion acquisition. I know that's left a lot of bad taste in people's mouths, but seeing e.l.f. prices rise would signal to me we probably will not see Rhode prices drop. Similarly, I've heard a lot of conversations about the formulas changing. I'll say that's not uncommon when a brand gets acquired. That being said, Tarang Amin, the CEO of e.l.f., did say, "We don't over-integrate a brand. We're not trying to change Rhode. We really seek to nurture a founder's vision." At least publicly, e.l.f. is sharing that they don't want to change Rhode that much. Granted, that's probably some PR fluff, and we've seen similar sentiments when brands are acquired, and then we've seen the brand do a 180. I guess the real answer is time will tell. Probably the biggest piece of the e.l.f. and Rhode story that I'm not hearing anyone talk about that I wanted to bring up is part of the reason I believe e.l.f. was really interested to buy Rhode. Now, obviously, because Rhode has been wildly successful in recent years, e.l.f. has said they see Rhode as a disruptor, much like themselves, and they feel like Rhode fits under their umbrella. I also feel like when you look at the brands under the e.l.f. beauty umbrella, they are a lot of that like prestige price point, which is kind of the midpoint between mass, which is drugstore, and prestige, which is high end. You know, Naturium, now Rhode, Well People, Keys Soul Care. They're not quite as expensive as those high-end brands, but they're not quite drugstore. So I do feel like Rhode fit really well into the e.l.f. family. However, what no one is talking about is that e.l.f. has been leaning heavily into entertainment and media. And in 2024, they introduced their entertainment arm, e.l.f. Made. And through this, they've done a variety of different projects. Again, watch the e.l.f. video if you want the full breakdown. But pretty recently, they actually released an album, and they're working on doing more original media. And going back to the other co-founder of Rhode, Michael D. Ratner, he owns media company OBB Media. He's worked with some of the biggest stars, like obviously Justin Bieber. OBB helped make the Sabrina Carpenter Nonsense Christmas special this past year. OBB has done a lot of partnerships with both Netflix and Hulu. And going back to earlier when I said Hailey is staying on, so is Michael D. Ratner. So my eyes will be on that and how he might be collaborating with e.l.f. Made, their entertainment arm, on future projects. But I will leave you with how e.l.f. is doing right now. They recently posted a very cringy infographic on their Instagram announcing their price increase, mentioning how much they are struggling.
"I'm in a mood. Everything is more money."
And there's nothing holy about tariffs.
Yeah, it's a sticky situation for everyone.
It's terrifying.
If those costs hit me full on, I wouldn't be e.l.f.-affordable.
But e.l.f. has us covered, right? Right?
Wait, are we going up in price too?
Yeah, by $1. Oof.
Fingers crossed tariffs don't go up even more.
I'm still only $3.
So that's the story. We glow up and go up $1 August 1st.
But I want to read from their press release 2 weeks ago. In fiscal 2025, we grew net sales 28%, gained 190 basis points of market share in the US, and continued our international expansion strategy. e.l.f. sales have also grown for a consecutive 25 quarters. That being said, while they do continue to grow, they're definitely losing some momentum. Now, regarding that 28% increase, Business of Fashion writes that e.l.f. is growing at the fastest pace of any large beauty company, but a far cry from the more than 77% increase it logged in fiscal 2024. So while they are still growing, they're not still growing at the same pace that we previously saw. And how will the Rhode acquisition affect that? Time will tell. I hope this answered all your questions. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on my next one. Bye.